Hello, welcome to another AP Comparative Government lesson. Today we're going to be talking about developed democracies. Our objectives for today are the following. We're going to describe the characteristics of developed democracies. We're going to analyze how political, economic, and social institutions differ in the developed democracies. We're going to compare how developed democracies have faced challenges to sovereignty. We're going to analyze how developed democracies have seen a rise in postmodern values, and we're going to evaluate the challenges faced by the developed democracies' post-industrial economic institutions. Developed democracies connotes some end stage that other countries are heading towards. We use the term here to refer to countries that have institutionalized democracy and a high level of economic development and prosperity. Developed democracies reconcile freedom and equality differently, particularly in the area of political economy. Countries with liberal political economies are focused more on individual freedoms than on collective equality, and so limit the role of the state in regulating the market and providing public goods, whereas social democratic political economic systems normally do the opposite. Consider the role of freedom. All developed democracies are institutionalized liberal democracies, sharing a belief in participation and competition and liberty. Yet these define these terms differently. For example, civil rights and liberties may be expanded or restricted without calling into question the democratic nature of a country. In this chart, we see the different democratic countries, developed countries in North and South America, in Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. It's important to note that there's only one highly developed democracy in the Middle East, which is Israel. However, we see them across the world, particularly in Europe, and we're going to be seeing the European Union as a case study later on. Politics are also shaped by the electoral systems in use. The majority of developed democracies rely on some form of proportional representation to elect their legislatures, but some developed democracies like the United States, France, the United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada rely on some form of single member district plurality or majority. Another group, including Mexico, Italy, and Japan, use mixed electoral systems that combine proportional representation and single member districts. We've seen this before when we talked about democracy at large. In short, developed democracies are politically diverse. They all guarantee participation, competition, and liberty, but they differ in where the boundaries of these elements are drawn and how they are exercised. Freedom is a basic guarantee of the state to its citizens, but the form and content of freedom may vary from case to case. Nevertheless, freedom might encounter problems when facing capitalist enterprises. So let's move forward. Let's question ourselves. Do we see a transformed sovereignty in the way that developed democracies have been established? In recent decades, we have seen a movement towards greater integration between countries and greater devolution within countries. Integration is a process by which states pool their sovereignty, surrendering some individual powers in exchange for political, economic, and social benefits. Integration blurs the line between countries by forging tight connections, common policies, and shared rules that bind them together. In contrast, devolution is a process of devolving or sending down political power to lower levels of government. This process is intended to increase local participation, efficiency, and accessibility by having local authorities manage tasks once handled at the national level. Although both integration and devolution can be found to varying degrees around the world, such processes have most profoundly changed the developed democracies today. Perhaps the best example of integration is the European Union. The European Union is a unique economic and political union between 27 European countries that together cover much of the continent. The predecessor of the EU was created in the aftermath of the Second World War. The first steps were to foster economic cooperation, the idea being that countries that trade with one another became economically interdependent and so more likely to avoid conflict. The result was the European Economic Community, or ECC, which was created in 1958 and initially increasing economic cooperation between six countries: Belgium, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands as well. Since then, 22 other members joined and have a huge single market, also known as the internal market. And it has created and continues to develop towards its full potential. What began as a purely economic union has evolved into an organization spanning policy areas from climate, environment, and health to external relations and security, justice, and migration. So they basically deal with every single aspect of society and the economy in the European Union. A name change from the European Economic Community, the ECC, to the European Union in 1993 reflected this community. The EU has delivered more than half a century of peace, stability, and prosperity, helped raise living standards, and launched a single European currency called the euro. More than 340 million European citizens in 19 countries now use it as their currency and enjoy its benefits. Thanks to the abolition of border controls between EU countries, people can travel freely throughout most of the continent, and it has become much more easier to live, work, and travel abroad in Europe. The EU is governed by the principle of representative democracy. Again, democracy is key for all developed democracies, with citizens directly represented at the Union in the European Parliament and member states represented in the European Council and the Council of Europe. So basically, we're going to be seeing different branches of power infrastructure within the European Union as well. We're going to be seeing this combined economy with the euro, but we're also going to be seeing a lot of setbacks when attempting to implement the euro in so many countries as well. Devolution is also shaping how developed democracies manage their sovereignty. Devolution is a process of transferring powers and resources away from from central state institutions and vesting them at the lower level. Typically, power over institutions such as social welfare has increasingly moved from the local to the national level. Yet across the developed democracies, moves have been made to redirect power to the local level. This process is seen as a way to counteract the distrust by bringing government closer to the public, thereby increasing local control and participation. Devolution can also help give voice to the marginal communities, such as ethnic minorities and women as well, by giving them greater control over the local affairs of the area. So here are some means to devolution. The first one is transferring policy-making responsibility to lower levels of government. The second one is the creation of new political institutions at the lower levels of government. Then we are also going to be transferring funds and power to tax to lower levels of government, affording them more control over how resources for themselves are distributed. In the United Kingdom, devolution has gone a long way towards bringing religious conflict between Catholics and Protestants in Northern Ireland to an end. At the same time, it also increased the power of the Scottish separatists, leading to an unsuccessful referendum for Scottish independence in September of 2014. Economically, these developed democracies are post-industrial. Here's the key term, post-industrialism. The bulk of profits are made and most of the people are employed in the service sector. This is work that involves not the creation of tangible goods such as cars or computers, but industries such as finance, insurance, real estate, education, retail, sales, transportation, communication, high technology, utilities, healthcare, and business and legal services. Much industrial production has migrated outside developed democracies in search for lower labor and other costs. Globalization, obviously, is accelerating this trend of post industrialism. The current expansion of the virtual market will further promote the development of this economic system. A defining element of developed democracies has been the development of social expenditures as a way to reduce inequality and provide public goods through such programs as national pension plans, public health care, education, and unemployment benefits. However, the welfare state has brought with it costs and controversies that have only been exacerbated by recent economic difficulties. First, although social expenditures have been lauded as an essential part of humane society, they are increasingly expensive, And because society is increasingly getting older, the social expenditures for an older community are going to be much higher than those for a younger community as well. Here we see the different types of political diversity in developed democracies. First, we're going to be seeing in terms of participation, the standards of voter eligibility are going to be different. There's going to be referenda and initiatives being used in varying degrees. Some, but not all states, automatically register all eligible voters, and voters is compulsory and mostly not voluntary at first. In terms of competition, we're going to be seeing different methods and levels of funding which are used for political parties and campaigns. In terms of the separation of powers, that's going to be varying greatly and is based primarily on the relative strength of different branches of government. For the liberties, we're going to be seeing distinctions in terms of regulation and allowance or prohibition of activities such as abortion, prostitution, and hate speech. This is because there's different ideologies permeating these developed democracies. And different degrees of individual privacy are protected from state and corporate intrusion. That's why we have privacy rights as well. Developed democracies depart from modernism and evolve. Modern values stress the environment's utility for achieving material goals, but critics now argue that the environment should be valued for its own sake, a public good to be shared by all. Science, too, was viewed with greater skepticism. It was pointed out that technological innovation did not lead to unmitigated benefits, but rather carried with it risks and uncertainty as well. Fears over nuclear power or pollution led many to believe that progress was a questionable goal. So modern values are going to be shaping the beginning of these developed democracies. However, we're moving towards more postmodern values, and we're going to talk about those in a second. Postmodern values, on the other hand, are much less focused on the idea of progress as embodied by material goods, technological change, or scientific innovation. Instead, they center on what we have called the quality of life, or post-materialist issues. So we're focused more on the individual rather than on material goods. These primarily involve concerns other than material gain, including the environment, health, leisure, and as well as equality between personal identity and also talking about diversity in general. A key term for postmodernism is going to be plurality. These new values pose a challenge for migration as xenophobia keeps surfacing and questions of assimilation and multiculturalism challenge the modern identities that have been already formed. So again, we do have a lot of modernist tradition in terms of our understanding of the economy. However, we're moving towards post-modern values in which we focus more on the individual and on the quality of life of an individual. Thank you so much for listening. Here's our bibliography. Thank you to Patrick O'Neill for his Essentials of Comparative Politics and the authors of all media content in this presentation.